Okay, what I'm going to do is show you how to take apart the instrument panel and to effect repair on the odometer. As you can see in our previous segments, we've told you how to remove the instrument panel out of your vehicle. So now I've come inside and I'm at a table. I'm going to need a power screwdriver, and I've got an old rag here that I like to lay down on top of the desk. It helps keep it from scratching the desk, but also if I drop any screws, the screws will not bounce off. This tends to dampen the bounce of the screws. So I like to use a little an old sheet or something and work on it. It also prevents any kind of dust from scratching the front of your lens. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take apart the back of this. As we turn it around and look at the back, first thing you need to do is take out these 4 screws. So by removing these 4 screws, we're able to remove the clock. Now on the turbo model, had a smaller clock, a much smaller clock, and then it had a tachometer that went with it. So if yours is a turbo motor, there'll be a clock as well as a tachometer. This happens to be out of the non-turbo automobile, and therefore there's only a clock. And I'll show you how to test that clock before we put it back in again. I'm going to set the clock up here along with the 4 screws that I took out. The next thing I want to take out is the center speedometer and the odometer and the trip odometer. It's all one unit right here. And since we've already taken these 2 screws out, we only have these 2 screws that remain. So I'm going to come over and we'll pull out those 2 screws, and then we'll pull out the odometer. Now it's a little bit tricky because in the odometer there's an arm that comes down here and has to a Y that comes in front of this rheostat, so that when you push this button right here, again this is upside down, it causes your trip odometer to reset to 0. So the tricky part is you kind of have to hinge this out, the top of it, and then right at the top there's a cable that you have to, I'll flip this around and show you. Right at the top there's a cable here that you have to kind of pull out on to have this clear it. And then you just kind of hinge it out and twist it so that this piece right here clears that little lever that you push in. This pushes in and resets the trip odometer down here. Okay? Now I'm going to set this instrument aside, and we're gonna concentrate on the odometer. First of all, the odometer cable plugs into here. The speedometer cable plugs into here, and it spins very rapidly. As this spins, there's a gear mechanism right in here, and that gear turns a screw gear, which in turn turns this vertical gear right here, and this gear in turn turns this brass gear, and the brass gear is supposed to turn the entire axle which goes along these numbers. So as this brass gear turns, what's supposed to happen is there's a little potted metal gear right here. There's a potted metal gear right there, and that potted metal gear is supposed to be bound to the shaft. And what happens is it's just a compression fit that slides onto this axle right here. This axle that comes in here, and it's right there, and then it travels all the way across here, and then it ends right here with this gear is pressed on, and this gear is pressed on, and all the rest of these are a 10-to-1 ratio based on this gear. So this gear spins the first indicator, and then that one, every time it goes around once, it flips this one, etc., etc. So down at this end we have a little crimp-on sleeve or bushing that keeps this axle from sliding out. what happens over time is this gear, this pot metal gear right here, begins to slip. Over time it starts slipping, and if you can take your finger and you can touch the gear and you can spin it, which I'm able to do right here. If you can spin it like that, then you know that this whole odometer assembly will not work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out that axle, and we're going to cause that gear to be crimped on tighter, and therefore it won't spin. Okay, what we're going to need for this part of the repair is we just need a straight slotted screwdriver. Okay, a straight slotted screwdriver. You will need a 7/64 drill bit. We're going to use that as a temporary axle. And then I have a real heavy-duty wire crimping and stripping tool, and I'm going to use that to mar the axle. You'll see what I mean in a minute. The first thing that we need to do is this little retaining bushing that they've put on right here. We need to pry that off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the screwdriver right here, and I'm going to pull. I'm going to just gently pry on that until I can get it to slide off of there. So you rock it back and forth until it pops off, and you see that now. You can see that I've got it to come off. I have the little bushing, and it popped right off. Okay, I'm going to set that to the side. Now what I want to do is I want to slide this axle right here out. I'm going to slide that axle out, and then in order to keep this pot metal from not spinning, I'm going to scar or deform the axle immediately underneath it, and then I'm going to push it back in. So as I slide this out, I want to make sure that it doesn't fall apart. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a temporary axle here. I'm going to slide in this 7/64 axle as this slides out. Now, you can see, if you look real close right here, there's some polishing. Part of the axle is shinier than the other part of the axle. That's where this particular gear has slipped and spun on the axle. So right where that polish is, right where that shine is, we want to put a little nick or a score in the axle so that we can then slide it back in. So I don't want to pull this all the way out. Now the guy who had this before me put a lot of grease on it, and that's not necessarily what I want. So I'm going to slide this out as far as I can get it, and then you can see real close right here, you can see where that shine is. And if you see where that shine is right there, that's where that axle has been. And that axle now needs to be scored. So what I'm going to do is I put the wire cutters on there, and I push just to make a little mark, a teeny mark. And I'm going to make a mark on there, and then I'll spin it and make a mark about 90 degrees in rotation on that axle. Okay, now that I've scored the axle, I want to slide it back through very gently as I remove the screw or the drill. And now that I get the drill over, you can see that this is coming out. Now that we've got the axle back pushed through here, what we need to do is put the bushing back on this axle. Now the way that I do that is I have a small nut driver, and you'll notice that this nut driver has a hole in it large enough for that axle to fit down inside. So what I'm going to do is manually I'll put this bushing on the axle, and then I'll just tap it with this nut driver until it's back on. So there I've manually started I've started the bushing back on, and I'm going to use my little ski device, my ski holder again. I put a penny there so I don't mar it. Right on the end. Okay. You'll notice now that up here, if I can pan up here, okay, you can see right in here, I've manually started the bushing back on there, and now the nut driver just will lay right on top of it, and I can pound on it, and it gently taps that back down on. And what we want to do is we want to get it on far enough so that it doesn't slide off. Now that I've got it started, I move it to the side, to either side, and now it's slid back on. And you can see now that it's back on there in such a way that it doesn't cause this to bind. This still is able to turn, but yet it's now back on there in such a way that it'll keep the axle from sliding off of there. And we're done.